They walked into the CEO's office holding a crumpled letter. Two little girls he'd never seen before, but their message shattered everything he thought he knew about his past. The morning had unfolded like any other for Andrew Harper. Precise, efficient, and without unnecessary interaction. His penthouse overlooked the skyline, drenched in silver morning light as he skimmed emails, sipping black coffee with mechanical routine. By 7:45 a.m., his sleek black car waited for him downstairs, and by 8:15, he walked through the polished glass doors of his corporate tower, a man more feared than known. Andrew was a creature of control. As CEO of HarperTech, one of the fastest-growing AI firms in the country, he'd earned a reputation not just for genius-level strategy, but for his emotional distance. No one got too close. Not his board, not his staff, definitely not the press. He liked it that way. But everything changed at 9:07 a.m. "Mr. Harper," his assistant's voice crackled through the intercom with hesitation, something rare for her. "You have unexpected guests in the lobby. Two little girls." He didn't look up from his tablet. "Security handles walk-ins. You know that." "I know," she said, her voice quieter. "But they asked for you by name, and they're holding a letter. They said it's from their mother." That made him pause. He looked up, his brows knitting together. Did they give a name? "Just said their mom is Olivia Brooks." The room stilled. For a man like Andrew, always 10 steps ahead, always in control, hearing that name was like hearing thunder on a clear day. Olivia Brooks. He hadn't heard that name in over 6 years. Not since a fleeting summer in a quiet coastal town. A summer he'd buried so deep, he sometimes convinced himself it hadn't happened at all. But now it returned in the form of two little girls standing in his marble-floored lobby. "Send them up," he said before he could second-guess himself. A few minutes later, the elevator chimed softly, and the doors opened. Two identical girls, no more than 6, stepped out holding hands. Both had soft blonde hair tied back with blue ribbons, their matching light blue dresses slightly wrinkled, as if they had been sitting for a long time. One of them clutched a white envelope in her small hand. They stared at him with a strange mix of curiosity and confidence, the way only children who have done something very brave can. "You're Andrew Harper?" one asked, voice clear, eyes wide. "I am," he said, more softly than he expected. "And you are?" "I'm Chloe. This is my sister Emma. Our mommy is Olivia Brooks." He couldn't breathe for a second. The name alone had stirred something, but hearing it from these small voices was like being struck in the chest. Chloe stepped forward and held out the envelope. "She didn't know we were coming. Please don't be mad at her." Andrew took the letter with a trembling hand. It was her handwriting. He didn't open it right away. He was still staring at the girls, at their identical eyes, the shade of amber brown he recognized all too well. His heart was pounding now, erratic and unfamiliar. He sat down slowly, letter still in hand. "You said she didn't know you were coming." Emma nodded. "She's in the hospital. The nurse said she was tired and needed rest. But she cried last night, and we didn't know what to do, so we came to find you." Andrew blinked. "You found me? How?" "From an old photo," Chloe said proudly. "It said HarperTech. We asked a lady at the station for help." He stared at them. These brave, strange little girls who had somehow slipped past the impenetrable walls of his life with nothing but a photo and a name. He finally opened the envelope. Inside was a short letter, written in haste, clearly not meant for his eyes today, but it said enough. Olivia hadn't forgotten him. She'd thought of reaching out. She had held back. She never asked for money, never even hinted. The note was full of regret, and love, and fear. He folded the letter slowly and looked at the girls. His voice, when it came, was low. "Is she very sick?" Emma's eyes welled with tears. "She said it wasn't forever, but she sleeps a lot now, and she forgets dinner sometimes." Andrew's chest clenched. This wasn't just an unexpected encounter. It was a reckoning. And for the first time in years, Andrew Harper, CEO, felt truly unprepared. Andrew stood by the window of his office, the city stretching far beneath him like a map he used to control. But in that moment, everything felt different, off balance. Behind him, the two little girls sat quietly on the leather couch, their legs swinging above the floor, holding paper cups of hot cocoa the assistant had rushed to bring them. They weren't nervous. They were waiting. He had read the letter twice already. Olivia hadn't said much, only that life had taken difficult turns, and she hadn't wanted to burden anyone, especially him. There was no request for help, no bitterness, only a soft acknowledgement of the past and a mother's love. He kept replaying the same question in his head. Why hadn't she told him? His heart pounded again when he looked at the girls. Chloe was drawing on a notepad with a pen from his desk. Emma watched the window, her eyes reflecting the skyline. They had no idea what their presence meant, or maybe they did, more than he thought. He finally turned to them. Do you know where the hospital is? Where your mom is staying? Chloe looked up. We have the paper. She handed him a crumpled hospital pamphlet with a name circled in pink crayon. St. Mary's Medical Center. He picked it up, his jaw tightening. And how did you get here from there? Emma answered softly. We took a bus, then we walked. A lady gave us money for juice. You crossed half the city by yourselves? Chloe nodded, as if it were perfectly ordinary. Mommy always says we're very brave. That word, brave, hit him in the gut. These girls were 6 years old. He had an entire team managing his calendar and security. They had made it through New York traffic, found a corporation most adults couldn't navigate, and delivered a letter Olivia hadn't even meant for him to see. How could someone so small carry so much? He reached for his coat. We're going to see your mom. The girls jumped up, Coco abandoned. Emma grabbed his hand. It startled him, how natural it felt. Her small fingers were warm, her grip certain. He looked down at her, this child whose eyes mirrored Olivia's so perfectly. Downstairs, his driver looked completely confused when Andrew slid into the car with two little girls. He didn't explain. He couldn't. The ride to the hospital was mostly quiet. The girls whispered to each other and pointed out familiar spots through the tinted windows, like any kids on an adventure. But Andrew sat stiff, tense, lost in his thoughts. What would he say to her? What would he feel? St. Mary's was a modest, clean hospital tucked between larger buildings. They arrived as the sun filtered through the clouds, casting a soft gold light across the entrance. Inside, the receptionist looked up in surprise at the sight of Andrew in his designer coat, flanked by the two small girls. When he gave the name Olivia Brooks, she pointed them toward the second floor. Chloe and Emma led the way like they'd done it before. The hallway smelled of antiseptic and quiet sadness. Andrew hated hospitals. His own mother had died in one when he was just a boy. He had never come back unless absolutely necessary. Room 217. The girls didn't knock. They walked right in. Andrew followed, every part of him bracing for what he might see. Olivia lay in the bed near the window, a thin blanket over her legs. Her hair was up in a loose bun, darker than he remembered. But her face was unforgettable. Even pale and tired, she was beautiful in that same defiant, breathtaking way she'd always been. A woman who had once laughed at the ocean and dared him to dance in the rain. She looked up when the girls entered. Chloe? Emma? Her voice was soft, strained. Where have you... Then she saw him. The silence between them was immediate and heavy. She didn't cry out, didn't sit up. She just stared, wide-eyed, lips parted in disbelief. Andrew... He didn't know what to say. The girls ran to her, wrapping their arms around her waist. We found him, Mommy. We found him. Olivia's hands trembled as she touched their hair. Then she looked at Andrew again, eyes glossy with tears. You weren't supposed to see that letter. I did, he said quietly. And I had to come. She blinked. It wasn't fair. I didn't want anything from you. I know, he interrupted. That's exactly why I came. There was a long, quiet beat. I had no idea, he said finally, his voice lower. Are they... She nodded slowly, tears escaping now. Yes, they're yours. The words hit like a wave. Not surprising, not unbelievable, just real. He looked down at Chloe and Emma, who smiled up at him as if they'd known the truth all along. And in that moment, something in him, some part he thought had frozen years ago, moved, warmed, cracked open. For the first time in years, Andrew Harper felt something that had nothing to do with business or success or control. He felt like a father. Andrew sat silently in the corner chair of Olivia's hospital room, elbows on his knees, hands clasped tightly together. The sunlight slanting through the window painted soft golden lines across the white floor tiles. but he hardly noticed. His mind was spinning, struggling to make sense of the impossible reality now unfolding around him. The girls, his daughters, sat on the hospital bed beside Olivia, curled close to her like twin bookends. They whispered to her, smiling, trying to make her laugh. And she did smile, softly, gently, but tiredly. Andrew could see the exhaustion in her eyes, the way she gripped their tiny hands just a bit too tightly, as though they were anchoring her to something. He finally stood and walked toward the foot of the bed. Olivia looked up at him, her lips parted like she was about to apologize again. "Don't," he said, his voice low but firm. "Don't say you're sorry." Olivia blinked back tears. "I never wanted to keep them from you. I believe you." He paused. "But I need to understand. Why didn't you tell me?" She hesitated, her eyes dropping to her daughter's golden hair. "Because you had your world. I watched your name climb headlines. Harper Tech, Forbes, TED Talks. You became untouchable. Untouchable to someone like me. Someone raising 2 kids alone, working double shifts at a public clinic. You should have called," he said softly. "I almost did. A dozen times. But I convinced myself you'd moved on. That even if you wanted to help, it would be out of guilt, not love. And I didn't want my girls to grow up being anyone's charity project." The words stung, not because they were cruel, because they were honest. Andrew ran a hand through his neatly styled hair, suddenly feeling very unprepared for any of this. He looked at the girls again. Emma had fallen asleep against Olivia's arm, while Chloe played silently with a plastic figurine from Olivia's nightstand. "Do they know?" he asked quietly. "Not everything," Olivia admitted. "I told them you were someone I once loved very much, that you were brilliant and brave, and maybe, maybe one day they'd meet you." He swallowed hard, unsure how to absorb the weight of her words. "I was scared," she continued. "Not of you, but of changing their world if you didn't want them." A silence settled between them again. Andrew took a step closer and gently placed his hand on the metal rail of the hospital bed. "But I do," he said, more to himself than to her. "I didn't even know they existed 5 hours ago, and now I can't stop thinking about them." He sat down slowly in the chair beside her bed. "I don't know how to be a father, Olivia. I've spent my whole life running from anything that even resembled family. My own childhood was fractured, cold. I've built walls for decades. And these girls," his voice broke slightly, "they just walked right through them like they didn't even exist." Olivia reached over and gently took his hand in hers. The contact shocked him. Warm, grounding, familiar. It was a hand he remembered from long ago, strong and soft all at once. "You don't have to be perfect," she said. "Just be real with them. They're small, but they feel everything." Andrew looked down at their intertwined hands. For a moment, it was as if time folded over itself. Past and present meeting in that hospital room with no noise, no boardrooms, no expectations. Just human connection. After a while, Olivia whispered, "I'm not dying, Andrew. But I am tired. My doctor says I need a month of real rest or I'll end up with permanent damage. But I can't afford not to work." "You're not going back to work anytime soon," he said firmly. She looked at him sharply. "I'm not asking for—" "I know," he interrupted. "You never ask for anything. But this time, I'm offering." He pulled out his phone and sent a message. Within seconds, things were already in motion. "I'll have a private nurse sent here. I'll make arrangements for the girls to stay somewhere safe and close. Unless you want them here." "I want them with me," Olivia said instantly. "Then that's what we'll do." He met her gaze. "And when you're strong enough, we'll talk about what comes next. Together. No pressure, no expectations." She stared at him for a long moment. "I don't even recognize you," she said softly. "Neither do I," he admitted. The room was quiet again. Emma stirred in her sleep, shifting closer to her mother. Chloe looked up at Andrew with a sleepy smile. "Are you coming back tomorrow?" she asked. Andrew smiled back, and something inside him softened completely. "Yes, sweetheart," he said gently. "I'll be here." And for the first time in his adult life, Andrew Harper meant it. Andrew didn't sleep that night. He had returned to his penthouse, a place once designed to be a symbol of success, power, and independence. But for the first time in years, it felt empty. Not quiet, empty. He walked from room to room, the sterile silence of marble floors and glass walls echoing back at him. There were no toys on the floor, no laughter, no heartbeat but his own. He poured himself a glass of bourbon, stared at it for a long time, then set it down untouched. He kept seeing their faces, Chloe's brave eyes, Emma's sleepy smile, and Olivia's hand holding theirs like a lifeline. The truth had cracked something open inside him, and now the ache was spreading faster than he could process. He pulled out the letter again, the one the girls had brought him. He read it under the low glow of his desk lamp, reading between the lines this time. The way Olivia had written, "I'm sorry for not telling you," carried more weight now than when he first saw it. Not guilt, protection. She hadn't shut him out to punish him. She had done it because she feared letting him in would mean opening up wounds neither of them had healed from. He looked out at the city lights, twinkling, distant, indifferent. By morning, Andrew arrived at St. Mary's again, earlier than he'd said he would. A nurse recognized him instantly and gave him a respectful nod, as if she'd heard whispers already. Olivia's room was dim, the curtains drawn halfway. Emma was still asleep in the reclining chair beside her mother's bed, clutching a stuffed bunny. Chloe sat by the window drawing suns and clouds on the fog glass. Olivia stirred as he entered. She looked surprised, even a little self-conscious. Her hospital gown and unbrushed hair, a far cry from the polished woman he once knew. But to Andrew, she looked more real than anyone he'd seen in years. "Morning," he said gently. "You're early." "I didn't sleep." She offered a soft smile. "Me neither." Chloe ran to him and pulled on his hand. "Want to see my window art?" He knelt beside her, genuinely interested. "Is that me with the tie?" "Yep," she said proudly. "And that's Mommy. And that's Emma holding the bunny. And this is our house." Andrew stared at the childlike image of a square house with a heart over it, 4 stick figures holding hands. He pointed at the 4th. "Who's that one?" Chloe blinked. "You, duh." The simplicity of it hit him harder than any boardroom negotiation ever could. She had already placed him inside her world as naturally as breathing. No conditions, no requirements. "I love it," he said. Later that afternoon, Olivia's doctor came in. He was kind but firm. Olivia's condition wasn't dire, but it was a serious case of extreme fatigue, borderline collapse from stress and overwork. Her immune system was fragile, and she needed rest, both physical and emotional, or it would snowball into something worse. "She's lucky she came in when she did," the doctor said, looking from Olivia to Andrew. "I'd advise at least 4 to 6 weeks of complete recovery. No work, no responsibilities." "She'll get it," Andrew said before Olivia could object. After the doctor left, Olivia looked at him, frustrated. "You can't just say things like that." "Yes, I can," he said. "I'm not doing this to take over. I'm doing it because you're the mother of my children." Her eyes softened. "You're still adjusting to that." "Every minute," he admitted. "But I want to be part of their lives, not just the man who sends flowers or writes checks. I want them to know me, and I want to know them. And you." She looked away, biting her lower lip. "What if you change your mind?" "I won't." "You don't know that," she whispered. "The moment things get complicated or messy, or the girls ask questions you don't have answers for, what if you walk away? Again?" "I didn't walk away. I never knew." "I know. But it still felt like you were gone." He moved closer, sitting on the edge of the bed, their knees almost touching. "I won't run," he said. "Not again. And if I mess it up, I'll try harder. But I'm not disappearing. Not from them. And not from you, if you'll let me stay." Olivia didn't respond immediately. Her eyes shimmered, and for a moment, she looked like the girl from that summer long ago, sitting barefoot on the beach with wind in her hair and fire in her eyes. "I don't know if I'm ready," she whispered. "You don't have to be. Just let me show up." She reached out, placed her hand over his, and that was enough for now. That evening, as Andrew helped Chloe brush her hair and tucked Emma into the hospital couch with a fresh blanket, he realized something unfamiliar, something terrifying and beautiful. He was becoming part of a family, not because he earned it, but because he chose to. Andrew had never been inside a toy store before, with the intent to buy something for his own children. He had passed dozens of them in airports, malls, and city centers without ever sparing a second glance. But today was different. He stood in the middle of a brightly lit shop 2 blocks from the hospital, surrounded by plush animals, tiny musical keyboards, glittery dolls, and miniature train sets. The walls were painted with pastel murals and stars, the air filled with the scent of cardboard and plastic and something vaguely sugary. He had no idea what he was doing. He was used to making deals worth millions, negotiating with government agencies, steering cutting-edge tech into global markets. But picking out a stuffed animal that wouldn't scare a 6-year-old? That was out of his league. A saleswoman approached, her smile professional until she recognized him. "You're Andrew Harper," she said with a flicker of surprise. "I am," he replied, keeping his voice even. "I need gifts for 2 6-year-old girls." "Your daughters?" she asked brightly. There was a beat before he nodded. "Yes, my daughters." Saying it aloud still felt strange. Not wrong, just new. Like stepping into a pair of shoes that had been waiting for him all his life. The woman guided him through the aisles, showing him puzzles, storybooks, tiny jewelry boxes, princess crowns, and even matching nightlights shaped like baby foxes. He picked a few things he thought the girls might like. Not too loud, not too flashy, then added a couple more just in case. By the time he walked out, his driver was already loading 2 full bags into the car. When he returned to the hospital, the girls were in Olivia's room, drawing with colored pencils on a clipboard someone had brought them. Olivia looked up when he entered, startled to see him carrying toys. "Andrew, you didn't have to." "I know," he said, placing the bags down gently. "I wanted to." The girl's eyes lit up as they peeked into the bags. Chloe pulled out the music box and gasped. Emma clutched the stuffed fox to her chest and wouldn't let go. Their squeals of delight filled the room like sunshine cracking through storm clouds. For the next half hour, he sat on the floor with them, building a small puzzle and letting Emma teach him how to braid the doll's plastic hair. Olivia watched from the bed, her expression a mixture of disbelief and something deeper, something tender. When the girls finally settled down with their new toys, Olivia and Andrew stepped into the hallway for a moment of quiet. "You're different," she said after a long silence. He looked at her, brow raised. "You were always ambitious, but you were afraid of letting people in. Now you're just open. Not completely, but more." He leaned against the wall, hands in his pockets. "Meeting them cracked something open in me. They didn't ask for anything. They just trusted me, instinctively. That's not something I take lightly." "I still don't know what happens next," she admitted. "Neither do I, but I'm here for all of it." She exhaled slowly, brushing her hair behind her ear. "I feel like I'm watching the impossible happen." He looked at her and for the first time in years really saw her. Not just the version in his memories, the girl he once kissed under fireworks, the woman who left quietly and raised daughters on her own, but the woman standing in front of him now, strong, scared, luminous. "You're not alone anymore," he said gently. "Let me carry some of it." She looked away, eyes shining. "I've carried it for so long, I forgot what that feels like." Later that evening, as Olivia drifted off to sleep, the girls curled up beside her. Andrew stepped outside the hospital for air. The city glowed beneath the velvet night sky, and for once, he didn't feel like he was looking down on it from a tower. He felt grounded, connected. And though he didn't know what tomorrow would bring, custody questions, complicated logistics, the terrifying reality of being a father, he knew he wouldn't run from it. Not now. Not ever. The hospital room had become a temporary cocoon, a strange little world where time moved slower and boundaries between past and present blurred in quiet moments. Olivia was slowly regaining her strength, each day marked by less fatigue, fewer dizzy spells, and more color returning to her cheeks. Andrew began showing up every morning like clockwork, always carrying something. Fresh coffee for Olivia, a new book for the girls, or just his quiet, calming presence. But today was different. It was the first day Olivia had been given clearance to take a supervised walk outside the hospital. Nothing far, just the garden on the rooftop level, but it felt like a major milestone. Andrew arrived early. The girls were already dressed in matching blue jackets, their blonde hair pulled into neat ponytails, skipping excitedly around the hallway. "She's getting better," Emma whispered, gripping his hand tightly. "She even laughed this morning." "She said she can walk now," Chloe added proudly. "We're going to see the sky." The elevator doors dinged open, and Andrew helped Olivia step in, his hand steady beneath her elbow. She was pale but smiling, Her hospital robe exchanged for a loose cardigan and leggings that made her look less like a patient and more like the woman he remembered from years ago. Determined, warm, real. They reached the rooftop garden just as the late morning sun bathed the city in soft light. It was quiet up there, a rare slice of peace above the chaos. A few benches sat among blooming planters. Wind chimes swayed in the breeze. The girls ran ahead, chasing butterflies between the flowers. Andrew walked beside Olivia, slow and measured. "You good?" he asked gently. She nodded. "Better than I've been in months." He glanced at her. "You've done everything alone for 6 years, Liv. I can't stop thinking about that." "You had your own life," she said quietly, "and you were raising mine." They stopped by a bench. She sat slowly, hands folded on her lap. "You're not the only one adjusting, Andrew. I built this life around the idea that I had to protect them. From hurt, from instability, even from you if it came to that." "I get it," he said, "but now you don't have to protect them from me. You don't have to protect you from me either." She looked at him then, really looked. There was vulnerability in her eyes, but no fear. It was as though something was shifting inside her, something cautious but open. The walls she'd built over the years weren't crumbling, but maybe they were beginning to let the light in. "I used to imagine what you'd say if you found out," she whispered. "I thought you'd be angry. Or worse, indifferent." "I was shocked," he admitted, "but not angry. Never that." She stared out at the skyline, her voice softer now. "They asked me once why they didn't have a dad like other kids. I told them that love doesn't always arrive on schedule, that sometimes it gets lost along the way." Andrew felt a lump rise in his throat. "I don't want to be lost anymore," he said. Their silence held meaning. Then out of nowhere, Chloe called from behind a row of bushes. "Mommy, come look!" They stood and followed her voice to find the girls building a tiny fairy garden between two planters, using pebbles and leaves and bits of wildflowers. "This is our secret place," Emma said with a grin. "It's for wishes." "Wishes?" Olivia asked, amused. "We made 3, Chloe announced. "One for you to feel better, one for our daddy to stay, and one for us to have a house with a red door." Andrew crouched beside them, heart aching and full all at once. "A red door, huh?" Chloe nodded. "So we know it's ours." He looked up at Olivia, who was watching them all with a quiet expression he couldn't quite read, part awe, part disbelief, part hope. When they returned to the room later, the girls were sleepy from the sun and excitement. Olivia lay down to rest, and Andrew sat in the chair nearby, scrolling through his phone. But he wasn't checking emails or stocks. He was browsing real estate, properties with gardens, quiet streets, schools nearby, and red doors. That night, as he stood by the window of his penthouse once more, something had changed. He no longer saw a view of the world he ruled. He saw a world he wanted to be part of. With them, the moving truck pulled away just after sunset, its headlights trailing down the tree-lined street and fading into the distance. The house stood quietly in front of them. 2 stories, white trim, a cozy porch, and yes, a bright red door, just like Chloe and Emma had wished for. Andrew stood on the porch with Olivia beside him, the twins already racing through the empty rooms inside, their laughter echoing against the bare walls. Boxes were stacked near the entryway, marked with labels in Olivia's careful handwriting. Kitchen, toys, books. It was official now. They were moving in together, not as guests, not as a favor, as a family. The decision hadn't come all at once. There had been conversations, some quiet, others emotional. Olivia had insisted she didn't want to depend on Andrew, and Andrew had assured her this wasn't about dependence, but partnership. He wanted to build something new with her and the girls, something real, stable, lasting. "You okay?" he asked as she stepped out onto the porch beside him. Olivia looked around, arms folded over her chest, eyes wide. "I feel like I'm in someone else's dream." He smiled. "It's yours too now." She turned to face him. "This is a big step, Andrew. For me. For the girls." "For me too," he said. "You're not the only one who's terrified." That surprised her. "You? Terrified?" He laughed softly. "I've spent my life in boardrooms and at shareholder meetings. I know how to negotiate billion-dollar mergers, but I've never braided a child's hair or read bedtime stories or had anyone call me dad. I'm scared of failing at the one thing I never thought I'd want." She looked at him, softened by the truth in His voice. "You won't fail," she said quietly. He met her gaze. "Only if you're by my side." The girls came running onto the porch then, Chloe waving a crumpled piece of paper. "We made a checklist," she said proudly. Andrew crouched to take a look. The list was written in crayon. First red door, check. 2. Fairy garden, almost. 3. Daddy's pancakes, tomorrow. 4th family picture, soon. 5. Movie night, every Friday. He grinned. "I can handle all of that." Emma tugged on his sleeve. "Where's your stuff?" He blinked. "My stuff? You know," she said with a shrug. "Clothes, toothbrush, your suitcases." Olivia laughed quietly as Andrew paused. "I guess I need to go back and pack a few things," he said sheepishly. "Don't forget your fuzzy socks," Chloe shouted behind him. He turned to Olivia with a smirk. "Did you tell them I wear fuzzy socks?" "They saw a photo of you from college. Remember that dorm Halloween party? Panda pajamas?" He groaned. "That picture should be illegal." She smiled, "And too late. You're officially soft in their eyes." Later that night, after the girls had fallen asleep in their new shared bedroom, surrounded by glowing nightlights and storybooks, Andrew and Olivia sat together on the back porch with a blanket around their shoulders. The stars were out, clearer here than in the city. "It's quiet," she whispered. "Too quiet?" "No," she said. "Perfect quiet." They sat in silence for a while. No need to fill the air with words. There was comfort in just being. "You know," she said eventually, "this doesn't feel like a second chance." He glanced at her. "No. It feels like the right beginning. Finally." He took her hand in his. "Then let's begin." And they did. Not with fireworks or dramatic declarations, but with shared coffee the next morning, with laughter in the kitchen, with mismatched socks and bedtime stories and pancakes that burned on one side, with the fairy garden they built together the following weekend, with movie nights on the living room floor and crayon drawings on the fridge. For Andrew Harper, the CEO who once lived above the world, life had finally found its way to the ground. And it had never felt richer. The house with the red door had settled into a rhythm, a heartbeat that pulsed with laughter, spilled cereal, late-night stories, and sleepy Sunday mornings. It no longer echoed like an empty space waiting to be filled. It felt lived in. It felt alive. 3 months had passed since Olivia and the girls moved in with Andrew, and every day brought something new, something real. There were challenges, of course. Chloe had a stubborn streak that matched Andrew's. Emma often woke up from bad dreams and demanded to sleep in their bed. And Olivia, still regaining strength, sometimes felt like she was balancing motherhood, healing, and a relationship all at once. But the difference now was simple. They weren't doing it alone. It was a Tuesday afternoon when Andrew stepped away from a video conference, loosened his tie, and walked into the living room to find Olivia on the floor with the girls, surrounded by crayons, sticker books, and glitter glue. Emma was sticking stars onto his company's quarterly report, which had somehow ended up on the coffee table. "I see we've upgraded the executive summary," he said with a smirk. Olivia glanced over her shoulder, strands of blonde hair falling around her face, her cheeks flushed from laughing. "They said it was too boring." Andrew walked over and dropped to the floor beside them without a second thought. A year ago, he wouldn't have dreamed of sitting cross-legged in his $1,000 suit on a carpet stained with juice. Now he wouldn't trade it for anything. Chloe held up a folded paper. "We made a new list." Andrew raised an eyebrow. "Another one?" "This one's for forever stuff," Emma added, her eyes wide and serious. He took the paper and read it aloud. 1. Friday movie nights, always. 2. Mommy's hugs, every day. 3. Daddy pancakes, forever. Nangavda. Family trip to the beach, soon. 5. Our home with the red door, forever and ever. He looked up, his voice catching for a second. "This is the best list yet." That weekend, they packed into Andrew's car and drove to the coast. It wasn't far, just a quiet little town with a view of the water and a small rental cottage. But to the girls, it felt like magic. They ran barefoot across the sand, squealing with joy as the waves chased their heels. Andrew chased them, stumbling into the surf with his dress shirt rolled up and his phone forgotten in the glove compartment. That night, Olivia watched him build a sandcastle with the girls by moonlight. He looked younger, freer, The weight he used to carry in his shoulders gone, replaced by something lighter. Joy, maybe, or peace. When the girls were asleep, curled up with sun-kissed cheeks and sea-salted hair, Andrew and Olivia sat on the porch of the cottage wrapped in a blanket, watching the stars. "You ever think about how far we've come?" she asked softly. He nodded. "Every day. I still remember the night I left your letter at the office. I stood outside your building for 20 minutes, wondering if it was the right thing. I wish I'd found it sooner," he whispered. "I don't," she said. "Because if I had, maybe we wouldn't be here now. Maybe we needed to become who we were meant to be first." He looked at her, his hand gently brushing hers. "I don't care about the timeline. I care that we got here." They sat in silence for a while, the only sound the distant hush of the waves. "I've been thinking about something," he said at last. She turned her head. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Her breath caught. He opened it, revealing a simple gold ring, elegant and unassuming. "I know we've been rebuilding, learning, healing, but I've never been more sure of anything than this. I want to wake up beside you every morning. I want to read bedtime stories with you, argue over grocery lists, and grow old with you on a porch somewhere. Even if it's this one." Olivia didn't speak at first. Tears shimmered in her eyes. "You don't need to say yes right away," he added, suddenly nervous. "I just wanted you to know how I feel." She took the box from his hand and closed it gently, then leaned forward, kissed him softly, and whispered, "Yes." No grand ceremony, no headlines, just two people who had once missed their moment, finding it again at the perfect time. And so, beneath the stars, with the ocean singing lullabies to the coast and two little girls dreaming behind them, a family that had once been fractured quietly became whole. Not a fairy tale. Something better. Something real. As the author, I see the ending of this story not just as a resolution, but as a quiet triumph of vulnerability, love, and second chances. What began with guarded hearts, buried truths, and unlikely meetings unfolded into a deeply human transformation, not just for the CEO, but for every character touched by this unexpected reunion. The twin girls, with their innocence and courage, became catalysts for healing. Olivia, strong in her silence for so many years, finally allowed someone to carry the weight with her. And Andrew, the guarded, driven man who had everything except a reason to slow down, found that real power wasn't in control, but in connection. The red door became a symbol of something rare in life, a beginning that feels both earned and hopeful. Not perfect, not fairy tale polished, but real. And in that realness lies the magic. This ending reminds us that family isn't always built the way we expect, but when it's right, it finds its way home.